This is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and we're going to share an excerpt of a conversation we recorded for the Capitol Press Room broadcast on PBS with Nick Reisman, the Albany bureau chief for Politico New York. We'll pick up the conversation talking about the uphill challenge that Republicans face in terms of winning the executive mansion away from Democrats, given the likelihood of a blue wave this midterm election, the Democrats' enrollment edge in New York, as well as the fundraising prowess of incumbent Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul.
I've made the analogy before, and I stand by it. It's very, very difficult for a Republican to win statewide in New York. It hasn't happened going on 24 years now. The last time was in 2002 when George Pataki won a third term. It's not impossible. It's basically a shot from half court in basketball. You got to have a lot of conditions that just simply will go your way. The closest guy to do it was Lee Zeldin back in 2022, and that was 6 points. This isn't horseshoes. Close doesn't count at the end of the day. You got to get to 51%. And Kathy Hochul now has about 5 years or so, 4.5 years on the job. As you said, she has been raising at a pretty significant clip. She's going to have to return, by the way, some of that money because she had been planning for the primary that never actually materialized. But at the end of the day, she's going to have a fundraising advantage. She's got the Democratic enrollment advantage. She has the advantage of Donald Trump being deeply unpopular in his native state. All of these things are going to add up to a pretty successful year at this rate, at this very point in time for Kathy Hochul.
Well, let's talk about a name that's not going to be governor, and that is Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado, who dropped his campaign essentially a few days after some things really did not go his way, and that included the New York City mayor endorsing Governor Kathy Hochul, and then the New York Working Families Party, a progressive third party, saying, we're not going to endorse Delgado, we're not going to endorse Hochul, we'll just see what happens.
We're seeing an interesting degree of pragmatism from the left flank of the Democratic Party right now. Zoran Mamdani obviously has a lot of stuff that he still needs to get done in Albany to show that he has had a substantively successful first year in office. Obviously, there's a lot of skepticism that a 34-year-old Democratic socialist can govern the nation's largest city, and he really does need Kathy Hochul on his team. So he has made the calculated decision to endorse her early on in this process before the budget is even remotely close to being finalized.
Yeah, giving up a lot of leverage.
Endorsing her over Antonio Delgado, who is polling, I think last I checked at the Siena University poll, like around 11% or something like that. So it was easily considered a long shot. And then you have the left-leaning ballot line, the Working Families Party, declining to weigh in at all and essentially putting in a placeholder there. And that reflects a kind of pragmatism that we really haven't seen from the WFP in the past, when they had gone to war with Andrew Cuomo by essentially announcing that they would back Cynthia Nixon, one of his left-leaning primary challengers, back in 2018. This time around, they're essentially saying, we're just going to stay out of this entirely. And that reflected a certain degree of understanding that, A, Antonio Delgado was highly unlikely to win that June primary. And at the same time, maybe they try to exert some leverage over Kathy Hochul during the budget process ultimately. But she really doesn't need the Working Families Party ultimately going into, certainly not going into June, and maybe even not even going into the November general election. The WFP does need a name on that ballot in November because they want to retain their ballot status.
Yeah, and what you're saying is really important there, because if the governor makes a calculation that I don't need to be on that ballot line to win in November, whoever the WFP is going to nominate, unless it's Jesus, it's probably not going to get that threshold that they need to retain that automatic ballot access, which is what makes them a force to the degree that they are a force in New York politics.
Right, you would need somebody with very, very high name recognition in order to, I don't know if it needs to be on the magnitude of the Lord, but
maybe Aaron
it does
Judge.
need to be, well, ask some Yankee fans, it may be equivalent, but it does need to be someone who does have like remarkably high name recognition, but at the same time that would ultimately be kind of a Pyrrhic victory if they were to do something like that, because Kathy Hochul, at least at this point, again, where we are sitting right now, is on a glide path to the Democratic nomination and is heavily favored to win in November.
So a change that most New Yorkers are not going to feel. But one that we noticed in the Capitol is the Assembly Republican leadership. And Assemblymember Will Barclay has announced that he's not running again. He's been in the leadership post for about 5 or 6 years now. And instead of being a lame duck leader, he's stepped down in February. And Long Island Assemblymember Ed Ra, who's been around for a while now, is going to be stepping in as leader. What, if anything, are you watching for with that? Because for context, for viewers, the Assembly Republicans make up a teeny tiny portion of the Assembly and thus don't have a lot of power there. So what, if anything, are you expecting from Ed Ra?
Well, one thing I think is notable here is that now you have almost all of the legislative leaders, save for Senate Minority Leader Robert Ortt, who is from the Buffalo area, from Western New York. Now they are all from the New York City region, from the downstate area, from the metro region, from the MTA service area, whatever you want to refer to as downstate. Yeah. That is now virtually, I think, 3 out of the 4 leadership positions in the legislature are represented by downstate lawmakers, obviously the governor's from Buffalo. But it's interesting that they went with a Long Islander, considering just the amount of power that Long Island Republicans currently have in the Republican Party in New York. You look no further than the nomination of Bruce Blakeman, the Nassau County executive, to run for governor. In large part, this nomination is about ensuring that you've got a lot of down-ballot success, primarily in the New York City suburbs on the GOP side. It may not even be about winning the statewide election. I think Ed Ra's rise to the minority leader post, you're right, it's a powerless position, almost as powerless as the lieutenant governor's job. But I think this is kind of about a broader story of how Long Island Republicans are kind of resurgent right now on the Republican side of things in New York politics. The big difference, though, is when they were last at the height of their power, we're talking like the Aldamato years, they were able to elect statewide candidates. And these days, the best you can do is not Senate Majority Leader or Assembly Speaker, certainly not Assembly Speaker. Republicans haven't held control of the Assembly in more than half a century at this point. But we're really talking about just what sort of post they can grab. And that now is like these legislative leaders' jobs as well.
Yeah, and what the role is really primarily responsible for, it seems to be 2 things. One, you are the voice of the Assembly of Republicans,
pulpit, yeah.
Right? But second of all, there are things that these members need to bring home to their districts. There is some nominal amount of money that the Assembly Democrats allow Assembly Republicans to bring back, and there's some nominal amount of local bills that they are allowed to pass. And I think that is only happening if the Assembly Republican leadership is in good terms with the Assembly Democratic leadership. And Assembly Minority Leader Will Barclay had a notoriously good relationship with Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie.
Right, and Hastie even put out a statement basically congratulating him on, what a wonderful run, and you were a great partner to work with. He ribbed him a little bit. It's something you don't really necessarily see in politics these days, but it is a reminder that unlike in the House of Representatives, say at the federal level, where even in the minority, Democrats can shape legislation, can withhold votes, and that has actually led to some government shutdowns, including the most recent ones. But in the state assembly in Albany, and the state senate for that matter, it really is a top-down institution controlled by the majority parties, winner take all. And one of the reasons why Republicans are so mired in the minority over the last half century or so is because of the amount of power that is vested in that Democratic majority. And if you upset the Assembly Speaker by making it some sort of quixotic goal to capture the majority somehow again, that is a one-way ticket to losing office space, losing money, losing out on jobs. And a lot of GOP leaders, not just Will Barclay, but a lot of GOP leaders over the years have made a similar calculation.
And that was an excerpt of our Capitol Press Room PBS broadcast with Nick Reisman, the Albany Bureau Chief for Politico New York.
Support for the Capitol Press Room is provided by New York State United Teachers, a statewide union of nearly 700,000 professionals in education and healthcare.